adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. We're going to get into our new standard for our next unit, and is fractions. So let's look at that standard. Our standard is 5 and 3. Add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators, mixed numbers, and to solve real-world and mathematical problems. So today we're just going to talk about like denominators. Here's our scale. So remember, 0 means no evidence, you didn't do anything. 1, we're going to be able to illustrate addition and subtraction of fractions with like and unlike denominators and mixed numbers using a variety of representations. A level 2 is being able to estimate sums and differences of fractions with like and unlike denominators and mixed numbers. 3 is our standard, so being able to add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators and mixed numbers. And then 4, you're able to design your own situation where fractions are needed. So, in your notebook, I want you to write down the rules for adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. Remember, denominator is the bottom of the fraction, which means it's the whole part of that fraction. So our rule number 1, when we add or subtract, we're going to add or subtract the numerators. All right, that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, notice I put it in all caps. Keep the denominators the same. You never add or subtract the denominators. All right? You never, ever, 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 ever subtract or add the denominators. The denominators, the whole part of the fraction, stays the same. And then 3, simplify or reduce if possible. We will get to number 3 later on in our lessons. But for now, pause the video and put this into your notebook. All right, so rule number 1, let's break it down a little bit more. Add or subtract the numerator. So when we do that, if we notice that our denominators are the same, so when we look at the add one, we have our denominators are 20. So we are able to just add the numerators. We have 6 20ths plus 8 20ths. So keep the denominator the same. See how it did not change. Do not add the denominators. We can add the numerators though. 6 plus 8 equals 14, so our total, our answer would be 14 20ths. See, we did not add the denominators. Now let's look at subtracting one. We have our denominators the same, so we can go ahead and subtract the numerators. 15 minus 4 gives us 11, so our total would be 11 17ths. All right, so notice in both of these situations, we did not subtract or add our denominator, only the numerators. All right, rule number 2, keep the denominator the same. Keep the denominator the same. So if the denominators are not the same, then you cannot add or subtract them just yet. If they are the same, then keep them the same. Okay, that's the most important at the moment. If they are the same, keep them the same. Okay, do not add, do not subtract them. Keep them the same. So you can, for this situation right here, you have 18 as your whole part, which is the denominator of your fraction. You keep 18 in your answer for the denominator. You can add the numerator. So 6 plus 10 equals 16. Now if we look over here, we have different denominators, which means we cannot automatically subtract. We'll get to how we can change that in another lesson, but for this lesson, if you see any of them that have different denominators, you can't subtract them or add them just yet. Okay, so it says different denominators means can't subtract just yet. We'll learn that in another lesson. Okay, so here are different ways to see how we add and subtract fractions. So we have the numeric way, which is just the numbers. So we have 2/5 plus 1/5 equals 3/5, or we have 4/5 minus 3/5 equals 1/5. We could see in a number line where we have one color going to the 3/8 and then another color going to the 5/8. So we added 3/8 plus 2/8. We can see area model, which is the boxes And then we have another one which we have like a circle, which is one that is very common. So we have different ways of seeing these types of fractions, and we have to recognize them when we have different problems when we're adding and subtracting fractions. All right, so now that you've learned a little bit more about adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators, just remember your rule. Okay, add or subtract the numerators. Do not add or subtract the denominators. Keep them the same. All right, so we're focusing more on rule 1 and rule 2. We'll get to rule 3 in another lesson. Now that you've gone through this with me, I would like you to start your practice assignment on Canvas.